your mother. It's time for another episode of Birds with Friends. Just the
duo
of feathery brethren, weathering any season to see the Eagles eating teams like Scrammy's top with cheese. It's Philadelphia. Bo and Zach kicking it cooler than
two.
Penguins till Zach runs off with his valet keys. He's a real nuanced goose. Pull up a branch, get loose. It's time for some juice on some Birds with Friends. The early bird gets the worm, but prefers getting turned like a turn on some Birds with Friends. Bo and Zach coming at you with stats and things flapping.
We are going to rip out the hearts of other podcasts. We are going to bite off their eyeballs. We're going to start every segment watching the scene from The Last of the Mohicans where the guy takes a bite out of the other guy's heart. We may not be good, but we're going to be nasty. We're going to reflect the blue-collar nature of this city.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Birds with Friends on a Thursday afternoon, live from the NovaCare Complex. Bo Wulf, Zach Berman, Marissa Dunn. Zach and I are separated by one wall here at the NovaCare Complex. This is like a knock 3 times on the ceiling kind of deal. Twice on the pipe. If the answer is no, Zach, we're here. We've got practice that we just saw the beginning of. We've got locker room coming up. We've got a lot to talk about. Lots of transactions, lots of injury news about this Eagles team. We've got a matchup with the Colts to preview, and we will close this episode by talking to Zach Kiefer, the splendid reporter who covers the Colts for The Athletic. We've got Swooper Sorecasting in the middle. And Zach, you look like you may or may not be in an insane asylum. How are you?
Doing great. I'm excited for this podcast. A little insecure about the background here. I ever since we turned to a visual medium, which was during the pandemic, but really full time early last season, I've been very cognizant of our backgrounds. We've discussed that in post-game situations, and here we are in the team facility. And the lighting in the background might not be what our audience is looking for, but the content, hopefully, is what the audience is looking for. There's much to discuss today, and eager to discuss it.
Marissa, what's popping in your neck of the woods?
Not much. Like Zach said, there's a lot going on with this Eagles team, so I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. Lots of transactions this week, so.
I don't suppose you're planning to make the trip to Buffalo with 3 feet of snow or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think I'm going to stay home for this one. I don't like to drive when there's like an inch of snow. So, I mean, we'll see if the game's played in Buffalo. But yeah, of course, the one weekend that the Browns are supposed to play there, that is the forecast.
Bit of a topic here in the press area. And then Zach had a chance to puff his chest out and say, I know all about that lake effect snow.
I wasn't puffing my chest out. I was simply saying I know all about that lake effect snow. I lived it for 4 years. It's no joke. Once it starts, it comes down. It comes down quickly.
Just like the Washington Commanders running game.
Just like that. Should we relitigate the last show? I know there's been a lot of comments. I've received a lot of comments on it. I think some of my argument might have been, or I shouldn't even say argument, some of what I was saying might have been misconstrued, which I take responsibility for if I didn't accurately suggest it. What I was simply trying to say is that when a team turns over the ball like the Eagles did, that is a major part for defeat. There have been 42 times this year when a team has turned the ball over at least 3 times. Those teams have only won 2 games of those 42. So you're looking at 2 and 40. So I stand by that. I don't think it's a controversial take to say that when a team turns over the ball at the rate that the Eagles did, then the side of the ball that turned the ball over has to bear some responsibility for the outcome of the game. Whether if that was interpreted as me suggesting that the Eagles were fine on defense, then I take full responsibility. I certainly did not mean that. I just think it's very important to distinguish the signal and the noise. Okay. And I like to focus on things that have material effects on winning and losing football games. And the numbers bear out that turnovers have more of a material effect on winning and losing football games than rushing yards allowed. I stand by the statistics there.
This is outrageous.
Okay.
How long were you practicing this top of the show spiel to defend yourself? This is like you came with receipts. You came with like You got to protect yourself. You're throwing out some straw man arguments here. How much were you practicing for this?
This has not been practiced, but I certainly take all comments and input into account, and that's what I did here. So with that out of the way, I would love to discuss the game.
Oh, you get to say your piece, but then we get to move on. I don't think respond.
Look, I think you and Professor Shulman and everybody else in our comment section really has stated their case all season long. But
well, what I would say is, of course, turnovers matter more, but it's not really like incisive analysis to say, oh, well, they turned the ball over, that's why they lost. Like, of course, that is obviously the most important thing. But I think the tenor of our discussion was, what is a bigger concern? What is like a bigger, what is the bigger reason to be worried about this team? What is their weakness? Yeah, I think it's the defense right now. But I wasn't expecting to have to jump right back into this bad boy right off.
No, so now you say the tenor of the discussion. I listened back. I literally know where the discussion started, and that was where you were allocating turkeys to winning or losing. So we were specifically talking about the cause of victory and defeat. And so I very much think that what I was saying lends, I stand by that, but I will not let the defense off the hook. The defense did not play well enough, and they certainly must improve. And the way they can do that, a big part of that will be with a potential upgrade that they made this week in signing Linval Joseph.
Okay, we'll get to that, Stone Cold News fan. But if we're going to keep having this conversation, you talked about if you want to relitigate it, the first half you were crushing the offense because they didn't have the ball. They scored 2 touchdowns on 5 drives. On 4 drives, rather. 2 touchdowns on 4 drives. That's 3.5 points per drive. That would be their best mark of the season. You're still crushing them.
Once again, I would look. We don't have to do this, but
listen, only one of us is in a room with padded walls right now. I think we know where this is going.
I would push back.
The straight jacket next.
I would push back on who's making the straw man arguments now. Okay, because I did not criticize the offense for its first half performance, but that is besides the
point. You did at one point. Yes, you did.
I referenced the 3 and out that they had. Okay, but that is not what I said. And I listened back to the podcast in its entirety, and then I skimmed through it as well. So I listened twice, and so I have a good sense.
Who knows where you find the time? I think if we make this less combative, the thing that I really keep harping on now, as I think about it more, and we talked about this a little bit in the post-game podcast, is that I think that Jonathan Gannon's overarching philosophy of preventing the big play, inviting those longer drives, which is to be fair, is not just Jonathan Gannon's philosophy, right? This is a widespread philosophy across defenses in the league right now. I think that is a much better suited strategy to a team that is middle of the road or worse, that is trying to limit possessions in a game. And I think that he and the defense need to be more willing to adjust in game, especially when it becomes clear that the opponent is trying to do that to limit possessions, to make the game shorter. When you have an explosive offense, and I know you want to debate about the explosiveness in that game, but when you have one of the better offenses in the league and one of the better teams in the league, you want there to be as large a sample size in the game as possible. And I also think what I was just saying, like if the other team is playing the way that you want them to play and they are winning, maybe you need to try to make them play a different way and adjust and make them play left-handed.
Okay, I hear you there. I don't disagree. I mean, we can circle back to the defensive philosophy. I think it's a bigger discussion, but I think there's a lot that went on this week that's more worth discussion rather than relitigating the pod. Do you disagree?
No, I mean, we're having the conversation. We can't have that conversation.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I think that the problem isn't the philosophy. I think the problem was the execution of it, right? Is that you need to get off the field. It's okay in theory to say that over 10, 12, 15 plays, the other team's going to make the mistake. But then, the evidence must bear it out, and you need to get them into known passing situations to force the mistake. If you're letting them in the 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 3, and I put the stats up earlier this week about the amount of times they allowed Washington in the 3rd and short situations, that's bad. That's problematic. That's egregious. That can't occur.
Long, though.
That can't occur.
Chances.
So, yeah. So, so as I said the other night, this defense is built to get you into known passing situations where they have the edge rushers, in theory, to get to the quarterback, where they have the corners that they can play in coverage with. And all that is for naught when the team is in 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 3. The plays that I think are more troublesome, more worrisome long-term for the Eagles was Terry McLaurin on 3rd down, getting past Slay. And I referenced that. If philosophically you're about preventing explosive plays, and you can't lose the explosive play battle. Okay. And so I feel very strongly with that Monday's game was bad for the defense because they did not follow through with their defensive philosophy. And then they also allowed Washington into too many 3rd and shorts. At some point, you got to get 0 or negative yards on 1st and 2nd down, so they are in 3rd and long or 3rd and medium plus. 3rd and short is a high percentage conversion for the opponent, and that is simply not good enough.
Yeah, and in that game, they were, even when they did get them, the few times they did get them in 3rd and medium, 3rd and long, especially in the first 2.5 quarters, Washington still picked those up. And that was maybe, as you said, maybe a bigger concern than the run defense. Although I do think that if you know what's coming, like 3.1 yards a clip is still not that great if you know what's coming. But I guess that's neither here nor there. In terms of like rewatching the game, Zach, I don't know if you rewatched the game as much as you re-listened to the podcast, but
I did both.
a few things that stood out to me that were different than what we talked about. I thought live that Josiah Scott had played a fine game. He made that one nice play. Looking back, they did certainly miss Avonte Maddox. I think that was a factor in.
We have some breaking news.
Ooh!
Did they sign Sue?
They signed Sue.
Wow.
Whoa!
Okay.
Were you getting this, Zach?
I mean, I'm basically the Stone Cold News woman over here.
I just thought you just hit it by accident or something, Marissa. This is fantastic.
No, I saw the tweet come from Schefter. I'm like, you know what? I'm going for it. Live podcasting.
Zach, this was on your radar, huh?
This was on my radar, but admittedly, when the Joseph signing happened, I didn't think both these would occur. Yeah, I when they had the open roster spot after yesterday, I was curious what was brewing. I did not think that was for Janarius Robinson. This is a huge move right here. Okay, this is an admission that they need help on the interior of their defensive line, and man, this is a going for it move in the sense you're not sacrificing future assets or future cap space, but you make this move because you think there's a hole you must shore up this season. This is essentially like trading for a defensive tackle at the deadline when you sign a guy like Sue or you sign someone like Joseph. So thank you for prompting us in there because I did not have Twitter up, but this is huge. I see on the right-hand pad, I see on the comments, is Sue washed? I don't know. I haven't seen Sue play this year. He hasn't played this year.
He hasn't played this year. No one has seen him play.
There's obviously more name recognition to it, but the situation the Eagles were in on Monday was untenable with Fletcher Cox playing 70 snaps, okay? And now Marlon T is out. You don't know when Jordan Davis is going to be back. It might be mid-December, late December. So I understand why they did this when I don't know if Sue can be a difference maker, but I like them going for it.
Yeah, this is interesting. Obviously, Sue is not a nose tackle, right? So he's here, I would imagine, to help spell Fletcher Cox. You mentioned it. He played a ton of snaps, and we can talk later about what he said about playing those ton of snaps in the locker room. this is like a Howie Roseman thing. You've got a shot here. Go get these guys. They've now got like their front seven. They've got 30-whatever-year-old Sue, 34-year-old Linval Joseph, 32-year-old Fletcher Cox. They go out and trade a 4th-round pick for 32-year-old Robert Quinn, who hasn't really done anything in his first 3 games. You got Brandon Graham, who's 33, 34 years old. This is not like the most spring chicken front seven that they've got working right now. We'll see, when Jordan Davis gets back and Milton Williams has played better of late. But I guess you gotta spread the snaps around if you've got this geriatric front seven. But we'll see. I mean, you can't be expecting Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh to come in here and light it up right away. They're going to probably have to play themselves into shape. I'm curious to see how much Joseph plays this Sunday. But this is certainly interesting.
Yeah, I think this is a move made for January, right? This is a move that's not made to beat the Colts or beat the Packers. This is a move that's made to give you more pieces in on Christmas Eve against Dallas and the second round of the playoffs. If they have to play an opening round game, in their hopes, a championship game, and potentially thereafter, right? So you saw in 2017 the benefit of depth, and the Eagles were getting thinner on the line. Like you mentioned, they have older players. They need to be cognizant of the workload of these players. And Sue comes in, an established, proven player here. Huge move. Looking forward to finding out more about it. But, yeah, big move for the Eagles.
I do like this. Does feel, somebody asked in the chat, why didn't they do this two weeks ago? It does feel like they should have had one of these guys in at some point. Like this is not a thing that is catching us by surprise, right? That they need defensive linemen. And to be fair, we don't know. Like they could have been working on this for a month, and waiting to find the right number. But like, it's not dissimilar from saying Marvin Wilson should have been up last week because you need bodies. You can't be asking Fletcher Cox to play 85% of the snaps.
I think they're about 1 week late on this, right? 2 weeks ago, you're going in that Thursday game. Things were moving quickly. You had the trade deadline in there. It would have been hard to do it there. After the Houston game, you had the weekend to collect. Jordan Davis' injury. It probably would have been better for them to do it going into that Washington game.
Maybe waited for roster spots to open up, but I don't know. That feels like a little too cute, right?
Yeah. Now, I mean, I don't think this is prompted by Marlon T. But
I think that's significant.
Yeah. But you have a rotational player who's out at least 4 weeks, and it's a knee injury. It could be, potentially longer, right? So it makes sense to me. Again, I don't know what Sue has left, but I understand why they are doing this.
You still have Alex Henry's number, Zach.
Do I still have it? I got to look through my phone.
I remember there was a little like a buddy comedy thing going on with Alex Henry and Ndamukong Suh during our time at Nebraska.
Yeah, so now they have 3 Cornhuskers on the roster.
Jack Stoll and
Cam Jurgens.
Cam Jurgens, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's exciting. I'm sure they know each other very well.
You never know.
I also think that this is like, if we want to get back into the Jonathan Gannon discussion, like he needs players, which is not, most defensive coordinators need players, right? But he's not necessarily like make the most out of what you have kind of guy. It's if I've got all the spots, then we can make something happen. You're responding to the slacks that we're getting because we gotta analyze this breaking news. Well, you know what? Yeah. Tell them to tune into Birds with Friends.
Well, that's what I just told our editors, and then we will have the. Let's see.
Let's get the influx of New York Times.
Yes.
Watching the show.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, I think this is. I agree with what you said regarding Gannon, and they're giving him the horses, right? Mm-hmm. They're giving him the horses. So let's see what he does with it.
Well, after a lengthy preamble, this is a very newsy week here at the NovaCare Complex. Let's send it next door to
that
the
was
Stone
you.
Cold Newsman himself, Zach Berman.
Big week at the NovaCare Complex, where the Philadelphia Eagles rebounded from their first loss of the season to find out, or woke up, I should say, from the first loss of the season to find out that Dallas Goedert is going to miss extended time. The Eagles tight end on his way to a Pro Bowl season was placed on injured reserve yesterday, has a shoulder injury, will miss at least 4 weeks. The Eagles activated Tyree Jackson from the PUP list. He had been practicing the last 21 days. So now he is on the 53-man roster, joins Jack Stoll and Grant Calcaterra as your top two, as your only tight ends. Additionally, Marlon Tuipulotu was placed on injured reserve, like we mentioned. He has a knee injury. The Eagles added veteran Linval Joseph, 34 years old, in his 13th NFL season. And he has experience with Jonathan Gannon in Minnesota. They overlap there, and he comes in and helps the Eagles at nose tackle. There were other practice squad moves and minor moves that we don't necessarily need to get deep into.
Not to those guys. Till Mac McCain, it was a minor move.
Fair enough. The Eagles signed Alden Tate. They started the practice window and Janarius Robinson. They've done things of that nature. But in addition to that, like we just found out, the Eagles are in the process of signing in Ndamukong Suh. It has not yet been made official by the team, but by obviously the reports are out there, and the Eagles have the open roster spot. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Zach. Let's talk Goddard. He wrote a story on The Athletic, which everybody can read. Good story. Talked to the key players here about how the Eagles move forward. Obviously, they've got Jack Stoll, who has the deepest voice on the team, I think, and is primarily a blocker. You've got Grant Calcaterra, the 6th-round pick, who is more of a receiver. You've got Tyree Jackson coming off the PUP list, who is also more of a receiver. I think you and I both, our initial thought was that, especially in the medium term, a post-Dallas Goedert offense is probably going to mean more Zach Pascal because of the guys who are there to play more snaps. He's the one who gives you a little bit more of unpredictability to the opposing defense because he can block for a receiver. But the more I've been thinking about this and like knowing what this offense, what they try to do, I'm not so sure that we're actually going to see them instead play more 12 personnel and come away from 11 personnel. And that way you have one guy who can block, one guy who can go out in the route. And even if it is like a little bit predictable that Jack Stoll might be the blocker, there's a little bit more you're covering for what Dallas Goedert could do. And you trust that having A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on the outside, those guys can win enough that maybe you don't need that third receiver. What do you think?
Yes, I hear what you're saying there, and I think that there's a variety of ways they could address this. Now, Jack Stoll, I don't think it's as simply as Jack Stoll moves up the depth chart, right? I do think he's going to be more involved in the passing game. He's played 40% of the offensive snaps this year, but he's been used, like you said, more in the blocking role. And I think if he's in the passing game, it's more in the short and the intermediate route. And asking around the locker room, the name I kept hearing yesterday was Grant Calcaterra. I thought I might hear more Tyree Jackson, but I heard more Grant Calcaterra. I think Grant Calcaterra is someone who could be used in more of those tight end screens, trying to get him into space that role Goddard played. Now, that said, and this is the point you just made, the Eagles played with Goddard in the slot this year for, I believe, 108 offensive snaps, okay? Or 108 routes run. But 108 was the number there.
108 something.
Yeah. And so I don't think all of a sudden they say, all right, Grant or Jack or Tyree, you're filling that role. I think that's going to Zach Pascal, someone who who we know he can block. Okay, for a receiver, he's a good blocker. And when you're blocking in the slot spot, if it is a running play, then you think he can fill those duties. And then he's a better pass catcher than your options at tight end. So I can see an uptick there. But then the other thing, I wrote this today, and I feel strongly about this. Nick Sirianni, he always talks about players, right? It's about the players, and he's the brother of a high school coach and the son of a high school coach, and you coach your town, right? So I think a lot of what they did offensively was because they had Dallas Goedert in the offense. When Dallas Goedert's not in the offense, I think this goes back to highlighting the players that you have and playing with the players that you have. And that means that A.J. Brown gets more looks and Devontae Smith gets more looks, okay? I think that is the way they do this, as opposed to looking in their tight end room and saying, how can we overcome how can we compensate for the absence of Dallas Goedert?
I also think it's much more game plan dependent now, as opposed to what do we do well. It's, what do they struggle with a little bit? If you want to get them into, nickel personnel and then run on them, then you've got Zach Pascal on the field more. If you think that it's better to get them in their base looks, get that 12 personnel on the field and then throw from that, they can do that too. I also think that this maybe means a little bit more of the planned quarterback run game in the offense, because it's the old, what Sirianni said about Micah Parsons. If you can't block him, read him. If you can't count on your tight end in 11 personnel to handle blocking the defensive end who's lined up opposite him, then maybe you are relying on reading him instead. And we see a little bit more of the read option stuff and some of those RPOs with Jalen Hurts potentially running. And he has run less the last 4 weeks or so.
As you asked Shane Steichen today.
That's right. All right, Zach. Any other thoughts on the game, what we're going to see moving forward? The game previous, sorry. The injury situations that are hampering the team.
Yeah, so and this ties into our initial discussion and ties into the news. I think part of the problem with the run defense is personnel driven. Okay. And so much of it is predicated upon having a nose tackle like Jordan Davis. And no disrespect to Marvin Wilson or Marlon T, but there's been a drop off at that spot. I thought
Marlon was okay in that last game. I thought he was fine.
I can't tell you if Linval Joseph is the Linval Joseph who was a 2-time Pro Bowler, but what I can tell you is that he's a big dude who has experience.
First time in a while, we've been able to say that he's all big, strong.
Yes.
Man.
He's someone who I covered a decade ago when he was a second-round pick out of East Carolina with the New York Giants. And
classy guy.
My first year in the NFL was his first year in the NFL. My first year covering the NFL, not in the NFL. So you know what you're getting in him. I thought you asked a good question today to Jason Kelsey, which was essentially, this is a player who's caused him problems in the past. If you look at that Chargers game that the Eagles played last year, Joseph caused the Eagles problems. Okay, you're bringing in Joseph to fill this Jordan Davis role, and are the Eagles overreacting to this idea that there's a formula against them? Maybe so, but I think it's more it's out of necessity. I think their run defense is predicated upon having a nose tackle, and without Jordan Davis, they don't have that style of nose tackle on the roster. Even Marlon T is a different style of nose tackle. He's probably more of the Javon Hargrave style of nose tackle. He's not your 6'4", 6'5", 335, 340 pound space eating player. Okay.
Doesn't that make it curious that they didn't have a similar body type on the roster to back up Jordan Davis or enter the offseason looking for that player instead of relying on having to trade up for Jordan Davis?
Yeah, I mean, not to get too deep into the roster weeds, but it makes you think that maybe they thought Noah Ellis could develop into a backup for that spot, and then he got hurt before training camp. I don't know. I mean, I don't need to tell you this. It's hard to find people that big, right? It's just it's very hard. It's the Bill Parcells theory, right?
Go find some sumo wrestlers.
Yeah. If it were that easy, everyone would have them. Look, this is something they could have addressed going into the season. The thing is, this is not their base defense. This is I shouldn't say that. This is not the defense they're playing the majority of the snaps. Before Jordan Davis was injured, we were talking about how they can get him on the field more. That they were,
and also they weren't that good of a run defense with Jordan Davis. They were still like 25th in run defense DVOA. So this idea that like it's all collapsing without him is overstated.
Well, I'll push back on that a bit. The conversation we were having before was that teams were running on them when Jordan Davis was off the field. That when you brought in when you didn't have that odd man front, it was inviting for teams to run. Okay. And so, yeah, that's the problem that the Eagles encounter now. And I don't know if Joseph fixes it, but I think Joseph can certainly help, because even if people say, is he washed? I don't know. But what I do know,
I would hope so. I mean, I hope he cleans his body.
Is that specific role. I certainly don't want to suggest that it's easy. What I can suggest is that it's transferable. Okay. Did I use that correctly? It's the type of role that you can go from Minnesota to LA to the Eagles, and you can say, all right, occupy this gap, right? Your responsibility is this gap on this play. And I think that's
occupy that bad boy like it's Wall Street, you know?
I suppose so. So I do think that was a big move, and I don't know if he's going to be ready for this week. We will hopefully talk to him when the locker room opens in an hour, but they need him coming up here.
Is it Linval Joseph or is it Joseph Linval?
It is Linval Joseph.
Has anyone ever called him Linval the Anvil? Feels like a good nickname. Anvil is in his the letters for Anvil are in Linval. Anvil is like exactly what you're looking for out of him, to be the big guy in the middle who can't be moved. You know, Jim the Anvil Neidhart. I feel like we got a thing going on here. That sounds like Anvil. Has that ever happened before?
That sounds like a great question for you to ask him.
Okay.
He was born in the Virgin Islands, so yeah.
Did I make a joke there?
I don't know what your joke is. So,
okay. I want to ask you about Fletcher Cox, Zach.
By the way, real quick, in the comments, I see people saying they signed Sue. We should talk about it. We did talk about it, and we will continue to talk about it. Thanks to Marissa for cluing us in on that one.
Fletcher Cox is such an interesting character on this Eagles team, Zach. First of all, why don't you fill us in on what you said?
Okay, real quick here. The Eagles have made it official. The Eagles have agreed to terms with defensive tackle and Ndamukong Suh on a 1-year contract.
Okay. You need to interrupt me with that, which we already knew.
It is official. I'm giving you the news.
You doubt that Adam Schefter didn't already get this from Howie Roseman or the agent? Like,
I don't source speculate. So, yes.
But you don't trust Adam Schefter. That's the.
I definitely trust Adam.
You just don't take it as official.
No, it's not official. I mean, it's official when,
all right,
the team announced it as official. What did Fletcher Cox say? Fletcher Cox was asked by reporters yesterday about him playing 70 snaps, which were his most snaps since I think it was November 1st, 2020 of the 2020 season, the Cowboys game that year, and how he feels from it. And he says he feels like bleep or beep. What's the appropriate? Can I say the word? Where like is there? Yeah, can I say
you can say the word, Zach?
Okay, he said he feels like shit.
Okay. You gotta warn the parents before you say the word. Say cover the ears. Also, like, you know,
As an aside,
You didn't have to say it, you know.
As an aside,
Like, we know
one of
the
my
word.
favorite quotes of all time is from Chase Utley when he was asked, "What do you tell kids?" After his famous World Series thing when he said "World Champions, World effing champions," and he was asked
What does the
something.
effing stand for?
He was asked what message that sends to kids or something like that, and he said he would tell them that when they win the World Series, it's okay to use that word, and I thought that was a good response. So
I think if we had the Birds with Friends analytics, I think like all-time curse words uttered, I think it's Zach like 15 and everybody else like 1 or 0. Zach's the blue. He's the one who works blue.
Which the irony to that is in my everyday vernacular, I seldom swear, right? But I do it in quotes. Like I think quotes should be authentic. I think when you say bleep or beep or I think it takes away the authenticity of the quote. That said, we were discussing Fletcher Cox there. That's too many snaps for him. He would tell you that. And I don't think
he's such an interesting character because, like, you know, he's a captain, but he's never been like Johnny Good Soldier. You know what I mean? Like last year, and I like this as a reporter, you know, he's honest, but he's not like, you know, he's not like Brandon Graham. And so when you bring him back, you're like, yeah, he's a captain, but it's not like you're getting, you know, just in terms of like his standing on the in the organization. Don't you think it's like it's kind of an interesting dichotomy? Like they re-sign him to this expensive deal relative to his level of play. You know, he's been okay. I thought he was actually not bad in this game, but like he's not like I'm saying, he's not Brandon Graham. He's not out here like, you know, being a good soldier in front of the media. He's sort of like willing to like publicly question the staff. Isn't it like a weird guy to bring back as your like veteran leader?
Was that him questioning the staff, you think?
Well, I think he's done it before. I think you can read between the lines there. He didn't want to be playing that much.
Okay. Yeah, he certainly did it after the Vegas game last year, as you correctly predicted before the season. I mean,
I just think it's like an interesting, you know, it's not the same as like a you know, like a Brent Selleck. How dare we give away 87 because this guy like, you know, puts his blood, sweat, and tears into the organization. It's not quite the same deal.
Well, I would push back on that. I think Fletcher Cox has put his blood, sweat, and tears into this organization.
I think you know what I mean, right? Though, right? Like,
I mean, there's a difference between what you say publicly and like this guy has played through injury. This guy, I have a lot of respect for Fletcher Cox. So
do I.
Now that said, yeah, he's never been one who I think is like the spokesman of the team. Nor do I think he wants to be that, right? But the flip side is I think he feels like he's entitled to a certain amount of respect as well. So there is kind of that push pull there. I only have half-baked thoughts on this topic, and one thing that I've learned probably the hard way on this show, if I'm doing a self-evaluation, is that it's not good to come to you with half-baked topics because you will walk all over half-baked topics. I need to be armed and ready for for that kind of conversation. I don't have a strong enough opinion on this to really give you nuanced discussion, other than I do think that when you sign Fletcher Cox, you sign up for the full Fletcher Cox experience.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about before we take a break and get to Swooper? We're gonna talk a little bit more about the actual Colts matchup at the end of the show when we have Zach Kiefer.
One quick thing that actually you can shed light on. I had the opportunity to speak to Jeff Saturday yesterday, and Jeff Saturday spoke a lot about the relationship. What?
Just funny. Jeff Saturday yesterday.
Okay.
It's his full name.
And Jeff Saturday spoke a lot about the relationship.
Yesterday was Wednesday.
Yes. With how many times do you think that joke has been used in Indianapolis already?
Well, many.
Yeah. The relationship he has with Jason Kelce. You spoke about Jason Kelce driving to his home after his rookie season. Howard Mudd put them in touch and them going over a lot of things. And Kelce spoke about this topic today. I think this is something you can shed some interesting light on, because when we were reporting the Jason Kelce story, you got a lot on the Mudd Kelce background.
Yeah, and I tweeted that out today. There's the story from Kyle Devan, who was brought in, signed up waivers right before week 1. He had played under Howard Mudd alongside Jeff Saturday, and like the first day he got to the building, Howard Mudd pulls Devan aside and says, "I got the next Jeff Saturday," and Kyle Devan is like, "You can't just because the guy's a small athletic center, you can't just be throwing around the name Jeff Saturday. That's Jeff Saturday. He doesn't grow on trees. He's a unique player." And then a couple games in, it sort of clicks. He sees there's one game in particular where he sees Kelce running around and he's like, "Holy S, that's it. That's him." So yeah. And Kelce spoke about that today. He said they actually had a really nice meeting after his first season, after his rookie year. And I think reading between the lines, he was he said he didn't want to give too much away, but there was a way that Jeff Saturday was able to reframe some things that Howard Mudd was teaching, because it's from the player's perspective. I think there might have also been something in there about dealing with Howard Mudd and the way that he coaches, how you sort of handle that. So
you just pulled a me there, by the way. Where you
I look very handsome.
No, you repeated what I said previously when I talked about that meeting after the rookie year.
Okay, well, you asked me to give the whole scope. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. So and
but you didn't have the same. You didn't have the same
speculation. True.
Speculation. Yeah.
About dealing with Mudd. The last thing that I would say too is that as Jeff Saturday is obviously in the news, and I bring up that comparison I made to a friend last week, where how would Philadelphia feel if Jason Kelce got hired to be the head coach in 4 years, with Kelce having been coaching? Because it's a very similar situation in Indianapolis. We can talk about and we did talk about the big picture implications of what it means for the league and what it means for equal opportunity and what it means for coaches coming up through the ranks. But from if you're looking for a Philadelphia comparison, it would be Jason Kelce being hired to be the Eagles coach.
All right, let's take a little break, Zach. Come back. We got Swooper and Crystal Bald Eagle. This is a bit of an extended break, so settle in. Maybe an opportunity to take a bathroom break if you got to go.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at BetterHelp.com/BWF and get on your way to being your best self. Unfortunately, life doesn't come with a user manual. So when it's not working for you, it's normal to feel stuck. Navigating any of life's challenges can make you feel unsure, whether it's a career change, a new relationship, or becoming a parent. Therapists are trained to help you figure out the cause of challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills, which makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour of the complex engine called you. I've discussed many times on this podcast how football season can be really stressful in my personal life and my work life, and it's so important to get these feelings out and relieve stress and learn coping mechanisms. As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online. Plus, it's affordable. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist. If things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist at any time. It couldn't be simpler. No waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/BWF. That's BetterHelp.com/BWF. This holiday season, the best deal in wireless can only be found at Mint Mobile. Right now, when you switch to Mint Mobile and buy any 3-month plan, you can get another 3 months for free. As the first company to sell premium wireless service online only, Mint Mobile lets you order and activate from home with eSIM while saving tons on phone plans starting at just $15 a month. Mint Mobile is the perfect gift for the holidays because it can save you so much money. We all have so many gifts to buy during the holiday season. Why waste money that you don't have to? Mint Mobile's best offer of the year is here. For a limited time, buy a 3-month plan and get 3 more months free. By going online with the eSIM and eliminating the traditional costs of retail, Mint Mobile passes significant savings on to you. All plans come with unlimited talk and text and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and switch easily and effortlessly with eSIM. Or if you need a new device, for a limited time, get 6 months of free service when you buy a select device and plan. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. For a limited time, buy any 3-month Mint Mobile plan and get 3 more months free by going to mintmobile.com/birds. That's mintmobile.com/birds. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/birds. Ambitious hiring goals for the last quarter of 2022? With a powerful hiring partner, big goals are no big deal. You need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Something I think is so cool about Indeed is Indeed assessments. They help take the stress out of the interview process. Candidates get to show their skills before the interview, so you can dive deeper into talking about what's important to you rather than just what's listed on their resume. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to sponsor your job post at Indeed.com/BWF. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/BWF. Indeed.com/BWF. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
All right, we're back on Birds with Friends, Bo, Zach, and Marissa, and we have more breaking news. Zach, the Eagles have agreed to terms with Pat Williams, the former Vikings defensive tackle. Yeah. They're just bringing back everybody from the 2010s.
Okay, that was a joke. Okay. All right, you got me worried for a second. I didn't.
Kyle Williams as well. Can you believe it?
I like to try to respond to all texts in a prompt manner.
Vince Wilfork. The Eagles are bringing in Vince Wilfork.
And so I was getting a bunch of texts during our show, and I didn't.
Big flex.
It's not a flex. I imagine you were too. Yeah.
Yeah, but not about Vince Wilfork.
No, Ndamukong Suh. No one texted me about Vince Wilfork.
Yeah, no one texted me about Ndamukong Suh either.
I doubt that.
Who do you think's texting me about Ndamukong Suh?
I don't want to speculate here. Who you're in conversation with. But yeah, people from elsewhere in the league, people from elsewhere in this media house. Yeah, there's a lot of conversation. All right. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole.
All right, Zach. Swooper. I'm up 7-1. You guys are in the tough spot. Dennis has suggested that potentially we make the playoffs worth extra points, maybe the divisional round worth 2. Go to 3 for the championship and 4 for the Super Bowl if we get that far. Nice to throw you guys a bone just to keep things interesting, I suppose.
If you win, you win. That's look. It's
you don't know what Zach and I have up our sleeve for the next few weeks. You know,
they're gonna collude.
You never know.
Okay. All right. Zach,
look, as Bill Parcells says, you are what your record says you are. And
yeah, I'm so tired of people saying that in the comments on the power rankings. It's like, just check the standings if that's what you want to see. Get out of here.
Bo's reaction to commenters is a lot different than my reaction to commenters.
Well, I think the commenters on the power rankings are a lot different than the commenters on your articles.
Okay. Fair enough. I appreciate all the commenters.
The Vikings beat the Dolphins 4 weeks ago. How could they be below them? I don't know. The Dolphins didn't have their quarterback in that game. Like, it doesn't count the same.
Your Vikings fan voice is your Kirk Cousins voice. So perhaps that's Kirk Cousins leaving a comment.
Yeah. The Jets beat the Dolphins with Skylar Thompson. Who cares?
You're very down on the Dolphins.
No, I'm high on the Dolphins.
Okay. So
we were having them at number 3 on the power rankings. They have a great offense.
So have you changed your opinion on Mike McDaniel? On Mike McDaniels?
What was my opinion? We both talked about we were very impressed with them when we went down there in the summer.
I thought in our over-unders, you were sour on them. Am I remembering this incorrectly?
It's possible that I was making fun of him as a person, but I don't think I was necessarily down on them as a team.
Okay. All right. We'll have to check back the tape on that one.
Okay. I'm sure you're going to run to re-listen to that as soon as you can. I mean, we could just pull up the actual draft results and see if I took that. But Zach, you have the most turkeys as always. You have 40 turkeys with which to bid. Marissa and I both have 27. I think it's your turn to go first, Zach.
Okay, my turn to go first here. So my first one is going to be Zach Pascal has more receiving yards than any Eagles tight end.
But not all of them combined, but any specific.
Not all of them combined, but any Eagles tight end.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we get to the bidding here, we have some big picture swooper discussion to talk about because Deniz has called you to account for proposing things that are unlikely to happen, which continued last week. And so we had the official lawyers of Birds with Friends, Sam and Noah Becker, mock this bad boy up, the Swooper Storecasting game mission statement. Now we can talk about this because I don't fully agree with everything here, but this is what they have come up with. The mission of Swooper Storecasting here and after the game is to entertain the Birds with Friends audience here and after the quote-unquote sickos by presenting a unique preview of that week's Eagles matchup through a fun, competitive game. A player should only propose scenarios here and after quote-unquote propositions on which the player would be willing to spend 2 turkeys, given reasonable resources, and which the player believes have between a 25% and 75% probability of occurring. Where the proposition is a demonstration of game theory, the probability parameters may be eliminated. How does this track with the way that you guys feel about the game?
I'll be honest, I've been doing it for 3 years. I still don't understand the game. So I appreciate I appreciate the mission statement.
I like the baseline of you should only suggest something that you think is worth about 2 turkeys at least. I don't know if that means 25% to me, because there are hitting a specific number feels like it's probably less than 25%. But if it's 2 turkeys because it's kind of fun to root for, I think that counts too.
I'm playing the game because all of my submissions hit me in the chat. So I don't know. You guys are the ones that need to step it up. So.
Well, I have no stepping up to do at all. I'm dominating the game.
I have a lot of stepping up to do in Swooper and in life. So need a lot. I need to improve and eager to do so.
All right. I will bid 2 turkeys on Zach Pascal having more receiving yards than any Eagles tight end.
3.
4.
3.
5.
Ooh.
5 going once. 5 going twice. Sold to Zach Berman.
All right.
I think you, Marissa? I don't know. I make this up every week.
Okay. Linval has a half sack or more or a tackle for loss.
1.
2. 2 going once. 2
2
going,
going twice. Sold. You got it.
Oh, cheap.
Linval TFL. That's a good one.
Or a half sack or more.
Or a half sack. The very first target of the game for the Eagles is a tight end. They go out of their way to say, we're going to be fine without Dallas Goedert. Check out this 6-yard curl from
1.
Jack Stoll. 2. Two going once. 2 going twice.
3.
Oh, yes, snuck in. 4.
I'm out on this one.
4 going once. 4 going twice. Sold to me.
Right. Lots of cheap ones going quick. Okay. Danis. This is no red. Jeff Saturday elects not to go for it on 4th down on at least 2 instances in which the Ben Baldwin 4th down bot suggests to go for it. 1.
Two.
What was the how many? He elects to not
2.
go for it when he should?
On 2 of the
2
At least
instances.
2. Okay. 3.
4.
5.
6.
7. 7 going once. 7 going twice. Sold. All right, Zach, you're up.
Okay, so for anyone who's making, I'm sorry, the blue light is. For anyone who's making the trip to Indianapolis, I hope you pack a winter coat or a winter jacket or perhaps long underwear because it is going to be cold in Indianapolis. The swooper that I am proposing here is the Indianapolis Colts score more points than the low temperature in Indianapolis that day. And the low temperature as defined by, let's say, the weather app on Bo's iPhone when he checks at kickoff, whatever the low is specified on that day.
At kickoff?
Now, yes, I mean, just to give us like a uniform time, because that low maybe the meteorology changes throughout the day. And so if you check first thing in the morning, it could be different. So let's say if you check your phone at 1 o'clock and you see the high and the low for that day, whatever the low reads is the official number we're using for this metric. And to give you guys perspective, right now, as I look at it, Sunday's low appears to be 16 degrees.
1.
2.
3.
4. I'm sorry, 4.
5.
6.
Ooh. 7.
'll let you have it at 7. This is a good one for you.
7 going once, 7 going twice. You don't need to mansplain it to her. Sold.
That was not mansplaining. That was...
I like that one, Zach.
Okay.
Colts points over low temp. Okay. Marissa, you're up.
Okay. Matt Ryan throws for more touchdowns than the number of defensive linemen signed by the Eagles this week.
So to the active roster?
Did not specify.
And a push doesn't count. He has to exceed it.
So he's going to throw at least 3 touchdowns.
He has to throw at least 3 touchdowns.
Does it say throw or would a rushing touchdown count?
It says throw.
Okay. Got to be at least 3 passing touchdowns for Matt Ryan. I'll say 1.
2.
I'll say 3.
4.
It's a big revenge game against Zach. 4 going once. 4 going twice. Sold.
All right.
That's a good one for you, Marissa.
Thank you.
Don't need to mansplain her.
That's right. Okay.
All right.
Grant
Denise.
Calcaterra.
Oh,
no,
sorry. I got so
Grant
excited.
Calcaterra leads the Eagles tight ends in targets.
3.
Wow.
3. I'll say 4.
5.
I'm out on this one.
I'll say 6. 6 going once. 6
7.
going twice. 7 going once.
I have a 33% chance of hitting it.
7 going twice.
We're really 50-50 because I don't think it's Tyree. So, okay.
Sold to Zach for 7.
Yes.
All right.
Before we get to Denez here, just quickly, Zach has 28 turkeys left. I have 16. Marissa has 14.
Okay. At least as many of Zach's submitted items hit this week as items submitted by Bo or Marissa. In other words, Zach is at least tied for the lead in submitted items hit. That was a little confusing. That's
a good one. Now Zach can use that and make his third submission.
I already wrote down my submissions, and I'm nothing if not honest. So,
I mean, you're lots of things.
Yeah, but I like to think that I'm honest. That I appreciate that.
1.
2.
So Zach's already had the temperature one
and the Pascal one.
The Pascal. Okay, I'll say 3.
4.
Marissa,
5.
Got that?
5.
5 going once. 5 going twice. Sold to Zach.
Okay.
Okay. You're up, Zach. Let's see how
Okay,
likely this last one is.
Nick Sirianni, and this, by the way, is a nod to make sure you guys listen to the interview we have with Zach Kiefer coming up after this. We pre-recorded it, which you will know because of the backdrops. So I'm not giving anything away there.
Probably the audio quality as well.
Nick Sirianni, in his post-game press conference, has some type of acknowledgement of Frank Reich, whether it is something he says, something he wears, or something he does.
1.
Does he have to be asked about it, or I mean, does he have to propose it himself, or can it be a question?
No, it's just however it comes up. It could be him walking off and saying something. It could be.
Does it have to be caught on camera, or could it be something he says?
No, but here's the rule. Okay, I will say this: it cannot be a direct question from Bo or me. Okay, so this can't be if Bo wins this or if I win this. It can't be like, what did it mean to beat the team that fired Frank Reich? That would be disingenuous. So it can't be that.
Okay.
I said 1.
3.
4.
5.
6.
7.
8.
9.
I'm out.
The challenge here is they have to win. I don't think he would do something if they lost, right? So
definitely not.
Yeah, so they have to win. Okay.
9 going once.
9 going twice. Sold.
Sold. Big
All right,
one.
Zach. I think that Frank wouldn't want him to do that, and that's why he won't do it. But we'll see.
I'm trying to think. I mean, could he wear a Frank Reich? I don't think he'd wear a Bills jersey. Okay.
Yeah.
What about a Maryland jersey?
A Maryland jersey. Yeah.
That could be interesting. Or I could see him walking off and saying something like, I'm making some type of acknowledgement to Frank Reich. Or it could be not in a spiteful way. It could be a heartfelt way. Like, it was so meaningful to come back here where I coached, under Frank Reich or something like that.
Okay. I thought it was supposed to be tilted towards the revenge, but that's fair. And he could do that.
No, it's
you said
acknowledge,
it.
But it can't be acknowledging. It can't just be acknowledging Indianapolis. It has to be Frank Reich.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Marissa, you're up. 3 left.
Okay.
You've both got 14 turkeys. I have 16.
Okay. Jonathan Taylor doubles Miles Sanders rushing yards.
Ooh.
A 1.
I'll say 2.
3. 3 going
3 going once.
3 going twice.
3 going twice.
4.
So.
Wow.
Wow. Bit late.
5.
They got it in.
All yours.
Okay.
5 going once. 5 going twice. Sold. Jonathan Taylor doubles up Miles Sanders. All right. Sunday is also the start of the World Cup. And the USA plays on Monday against Wales. The USA, in their game against Wales on Monday, scores more goals than Tyree Jackson has catches in the game on Sunday.
Okay. 2.
Has to be more, not equal.
What'd you say, Zach?
I said 2.
3.
I'll say 4, just to root for it. 4 going once. 4 going twice. Sold. Big Tyree Jackson believers.
Who's your non-US pick?
To win or fun to watch?
No, the follow. Yeah, like who's the non-US team?
I'm excited to watch Ecuador. Got 3 Brighton players on the team.
Okay.
And they play in the first game on Sunday against Qatar.
Okay.
All right. Low scoring, low bids this week. People got a lot of turkeys left heading into the last.
Yeah, I should have been higher on that. I was worried about like a 0-0 draw. But
did you throwing out a 0?
But that's when I should have been more aggressive on. That's one that will stick with me tonight when I do my post game.
Okay.
All right. Final one from Diniz. There's some red on here.
Oh, good.
The Eagles have 0 turnovers. The Eagles are still 4th best in avoiding turnovers per drive, and the Colts defense is ranked 30th at forcing them. This is a regular auction, but unlimited borrowing from next week's turkeys is allowed for all bidders.
But we've all got so many turkeys that may not come into play.
Yeah.
3.
No turnovers for the Eagles.
4.
5.
6. How many I got left?
9.
Okay.
7.
9.
You can have a 9.
All right. Oh, Bo, going once. Going twice. Sold?
You got it.
Okay. I mean, I hope they're reading those signs around the building, Zach, after this week.
Didn't work last week.
I know, but, I'm
All
sure
right,
there's going to be an
Marissa,
emphasis on holding the football.
You cleaned up this week. You've got no turnovers. Jonathan Taylor doubles up Miles Sanders. Matt Ryan throws at least 3 touchdown passes. The Colts score more points than the low temperature at kickoff. Linval Joseph has a tackle for loss or a half sack. Zach, you have You followed up your Zach. You went Zach on Zach, even though he may have let you down a couple times in the past. Zach Pascal has more receiving yards than any Eagles tight end. Grant Calcaterra leads the Eagles tight ends in targets. Nick Sirianni has some kind of Frank Reich reference in the postgame podcast, and a Zach proposal is Zach's hits from his proposals are tied for the lead this week among the four of us.
Tied or beats. At least ties, right?
Yeah, at least ties. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And then I have the first target of the game is to a tight end. Exciting to watch the very first play. That'll be good. Although it doesn't have to be the first play, just the first pass. Oh yeah, the first target of the game.
Okay, that's how it was written, or was it the first play?
Yeah. No, the first target of the game is to a tight end.
Zach,
the USA scores more goals than Tyree Jackson has catches, and Jeff Saturday turtles on at least 2 recommended go for it fourth downs. There you go. All right, it's time for the crystal ball eagle, Zach. We'll get this out of the way before we get to Zach Kiefer, who's going to have much more insight on the Colts, the situation over there. We get into a little Chris Ballard, Nick Sirianni discussion, in addition to previewing the game. Good stuff. Please stick around for that. But before we do that, we got to get to the locker room, Zach. So let's get to the crystal ball eagle.
Yeah, so the Eagles 6.5-point favorites here. The over-under is 45. I think that's a bigger number than I expected. I like the Eagles bouncing back here. I think this is a tough spot. I think Indianapolis is a better team than maybe perception indicates. If Sam Ehlinger was the quarterback, I might think differently of them. But I think Matt Ryan is a professional quarterback who gives them a chance to win games every week. And then they can run the ball, and I think they have some players on defense. But I think the Eagles are better than you saw. I don't think they're going to be turning the ball over 3-4 times in a game. And I just think they're going to respond. I think they win and they cover. I'm going Eagles 24 and Colts 16.
Yeah, I'm surprised that this line is so low. 6.5.
So it started off as 10, I believe. And then after the Monday night game and after Matt Ryan gets in to start, it goes down to 6.5.
Yeah, I think it was 7.5 by the time the game ended on Monday night, because I think it had adjusted that Matt Ryan was the quarterback, as you suggested. But yeah, I expect to bounce back from the Eagles here. I think they're going to have some kind of, maybe not solution in the running game, but I find it hard to believe they're going to be willing to get fully run on 3 weeks in a row. I think they're going to have some things up their sleeve on offense. The one thing that does worry me is the state of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, who were both limited in the walkthrough yesterday. We know that they both got a little bit nicked up in the game. A.J. Brown certainly did not look like himself. Even if you read between the transactional news lines, the Eagles releasing Auden Tate from the practice squad and then re-signing him a day later and getting rid of Mac McCain tells me that they needed healthy legs at receiver just to practice. And so that's the thing that's on my radar, that with no Dallas Goedert, if A.J. Brown is not himself, then all of a sudden maybe this is a 2021 pound the rock type game for the Eagles against a Colts defense that I think can be run on. So that's something that I'm thinking about. But I do think that the Eagles are going to bounce back with a win here, find a way. Maybe it will be tighter and they won't cover, but they'll still get the win. But I'm gonna predict the cover. Give me Eagles 28, Colts 20. A couple of red zone stops for the Eagles this week. All right. That'll do it for this live portion of Birds with Friends. We'll go to break and return with Zach Kiefer talking tumultuous times in Indianapolis, Matt Ryan's history against Zach Berman, and much, much more.
You know what I don't like? You know what's a pain? It really grinds my gears, borderline grouse material? Bad razors. And I'm not talking about Ramon. That's why you got to meet Henson Shaving. Henson Shaving is a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer that has made parts for the ISS, the International Space Station, and Mars rover. And now they are bringing that precision engineering to your face, to that stubble, your shaving experience. Razor blades are like diving boards. The longer the board, the more wobble. The more wobble, and I'm not talking about let me see you wobble. The more wobble, the more nicks, cuts, and scrapes. A bad shave isn't a blade problem, it's an extension problem. And so by using aerospace-grade CNC machines, Henson makes metal razors that extend just 0.0013 inches, which is less than the thickness of a human hair. That means a secure and stable blade with a vibration-free shave. If all this sounds a little bit too in the weeds, that's okay. You don't need to know it. They're the ones who make it. They got you covered. There's a clog-free design. It gets better. The razor has built-in channels to evacuate hair and cream, which makes clogging virtually impossible. It is the best razor. Henson Shaving wants the best razor, not the best razor business. That means no plastic, no subscriptions, no proprietary blades, and no planned obsolescence. It's affordable too. The Henson razor works with standard dual-edged blades to give you that old school shave with the benefits of new school tech. Once you own a Henson razor, it's only about $3 to $5 per year to replace the blades. So, it's time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that will last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/birds. Henson, like Drew Henson, to pick the razor for you and use code BIRDS, and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just make sure to add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades. 100 free blades! When you head to hensonshaving.com/birds. That also Jim Henson would apply. And use the code BIRDS. Do you know how much your subscriptions really cost? Most Americans think they spend around $80 a month on subscriptions, when the actual cost is closer to 200 bones. That's right. You could be wasting hundreds of dollars each month on subscriptions you don't even know about. There's this app that takes care of that for me. It's called Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill. The app shows all your subscriptions in one place and then cancels for you whatever you don't still want. Rocket Money can even find subscriptions you didn't know you were paying for. You may find out you've been double charged for a subscription. Double bang! You don't want that. And to cancel a subscription, all you have to do is press cancel. Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Get rid of useless subscriptions with Rocket Money now. Go to rocketmoney.com/birds. Seriously, it could save you hundreds per year. That's rocketmoney.com/birds. Cancel your unnecessary subscriptions right now at rocketmoney.com/birds. All right, welcome back to Birds with Friends. Bo, Zach, and joined now, very pleased to be joined by another Zach Kiefer, who covers the Colts for The Athletic. Zach, how are you?
What an honor. I'm great. I feel honored to join the world-renowned podcast, Birds with Friends. I think this is maybe the second time, but it's always a thrill.
And I think we may have asked you this before, but how do you feel a bit of a rivalry with Zachs who spell it differently? Or do you feel a kinship with other Zachs?
I do. I take a lot of heat for the way I spell my name. It's almost like people forget that my parents picked it. But no, I do. I get a lot. I've got a buddy in Indy who spells it like Zach Berman, and
the correct way.
Little bit of a rivalry, yeah.
Wow, Zach is in on Berman is in on this rivalry. He's throwing shots.
It's just like you and Bo Allen, right? With the boat, with the spelling.
Yeah, I mean that's objectively incorrect. So I think we can all agree about that. Zach, you are where we have been. You are post Carson Wentz, post head coach fired. But it has been a little bit more tumultuous, I would say. Give us, I guess, like the sense of what's going on in Indianapolis. You've got an owner who's somewhere between meddlesome and a madman, making all kinds of crazy decisions. Frank Reich's not allowed to play Matt Ryan, but then Jeff Saturday can start him at quarterback. What's going on? What's the scene like? How crazy is this?
Yeah, you guys thought it was tumultuous in Philly the last couple of years. I'll see your tumultuous and I'll raise you. It's the third straight decision that Jim Irsay has made, going back to the Carson Wentz trade last year, that he has made unilaterally, that he has made at the top, not his GM, not his coach. And if you go back to last January and February, and you guys kind of went through this in Philly, Carson was out no matter what. I remember telling people this at the combine, like they've already made their decision and people just not believing me because of the situation. They had traded the 1 and the 3 to Philly. But Jim Irsay said back then, like, he's going to leave no matter what. And then secondly, he was behind the benching of Matt Ryan a couple of weeks ago. That was his decision. He kind of forced that on Frank Reich. And that's a tough spot to be if you're a head coach who's trying to win games with a quarterback who's not as good objectively as Matt Ryan. Now, Matt Ryan had his struggles, but, that just made it on Frank. And then the third decision, this is the stunner that really took all of us by surprise, including a lot of people in the building, the players, the coaches, the executives. They hired Jeff Saturday off an ESPN television set to be the head coach, and he won his first game against a really bad Raiders team. So it's been wild. It's almost like the greatest soap opera in sports right now. And honestly, Nick Sirianni's coming to town this week, and we got to catch up with him yesterday, and it feels like the 8th or 9th biggest storyline going into this one.
You brought up Nick Sirianni. I am curious after the fact here, right? When Nick was hired, he was relatively unknown, at least in Philadelphia, and was kind of viewed as he was Frank Reich's caddy, right? He did not call plays. He was not on these lists for your prototypical, or I shouldn't say prototypical, for your kind of hot up and coming coordinators. And the Eagles were the only team that interviewed him that year. With the benefit of A, hindsight, and B, time, seeing how this has developed, how valuable was Nick to the operation in Indianapolis, and how much did they miss him when he was gone?
Yeah, that's become more and more clear the last year or so. Nick had a huge role in that offense, and everyone thinks he didn't call the plays, he didn't do much. There were so many instances where Frank would say, well, that touchdown was because Nick put that in the game plan. So Nick and Frank put together the game plans. And frankly, to be perfectly honest, Marcus Brady, who replaced Nick Sirianni in Indy as the OC, the offense wasn't as good. And I realized, everybody in Indy has lived through these 5 quarterbacks in 5 years, and the quarterbacks are very different. They went from Jacoby Brissett to Phillip Rivers in Nick's last 2 years to Carson Wentz last year to Matt Ryan. So very different skill sets. But I think we're starting to understand in Indy how good Nick was, how good he was at game plans, how much he related to the players. Ask Zach Pascal, he's in Philly. And I talked to a lot of guys this week about how much of an imprint Sirianni had on their careers. And frankly, the offense has not been the same since Nick left. And part of that is, Carson Wentz and his struggles late last season. And part of that is the offensive line regressing. But also a big part of it is the Colts had a really, really good OC for those 3 years. And I don't think we really appreciated it as much as we should have at that time.
From the outside looking in, I have sort of a big picture question, Zach. And why is it that, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe this will change in the offseason, but why is it that Chris Ballard is viewed as safe and Frank Reich is the fall guy, when if you look at the roster construction, I think you could pick that apart, maybe even more so than the coaching.
Yeah, that's a totally legit question. Both of their hands are dirty in this, right? Frank pushed for Carson Wentz. We all know that.
Sure. That
didn't work out. I don't think Jim Irsay ever. I think he lost faith in his head coach after the Wentz move. Busted. And Chris Ballard's hands are dirty as well. He tried to play Matt Pryor at left tackle, and we all saw every single day in camp that it wasn't going to work out. Sorry,
we
Bo,
saw that too. Yes.
It wasn't going to work out, man. He was benched at 3 different positions.
I still can't believe they entered the season with him as a left tackle.
Yeah, even Matt, and Matt is such a nice guy, and we asked him in the spring, do you think you can hold it down at left tackle? And he's like, man, I honestly, I thought I was the last person that'd be sitting here telling you on the left tackle. It's like, isn't that a huge red flag? So every single thing that has gone wrong this season, the root of it goes back to the offensive line. And for me, that's more on Ballard and just the decisions. They went with this kid, Danny Pinter, at right guard, who's just not an NFL right guard. And so Matt Ryan started to throw interceptions and started to fumble the ball, and everything kind of fell apart. JT couldn't get going. But I think another part of it, to answer your question, Bo, is you fire Frank Reich, and I'm guessing here you owe him 20, 25, 30 million because you had him signed through 2026. And I know we all think owners are just loaded and the money never stops. But, if they fire Chris Ballard, then they're embarking on a very, very ambitious rebuild. They're almost starting from scratch. And they haven't done that really since 2012 around here because they don't have a quarterback answer as well. So that's what we think they're going to do in the first round. So, Ballard's missed. He's also hit a lot in the draft, and he's put together some good pieces around this team. Well, I think the offensive line moves are indefensible. I don't think Jim Irsay wants to dive into the abyss again and then also have to pay two men $40 million to not work for him.
Quick Matt Pryor story when Andre Dillard got hurt for the Eagles. They tried Matt Pryor at left tackle for about a practice or two, and then basically they forced Jason Peters they gave Jason Peters more money to move over from left guard to left tackle. They saw it right away. I am curious.
I remember that one practice, Josh Sweat just killed him all day.
Yes,
it was at the link. It was awful.
Yep.
Yeah.
I saw with Hutchinson from Detroit this year in the joint practices. It was just that's a problem.
The listeners of this podcast have heard me rave about your Luck podcast. I hope everyone listens to that. The Andrew Luck situation keeps coming up because obviously Frank Reich and Chris Ballard and Jim Irsay couldn't plan for a quarterback like him retiring when he did. But what should they have done differently after the fact? Do you think the moves that they made were defensible within themselves? Do you think they should have had a reset? Essentially, why are they in this position where it's quarterback after quarterback after quarterback?
Yeah. How much time do you have? This will take 2 or 3 hours. That's a
Luck
good
part
question,
2,
Zach, because no one goes back and puts themselves in those positions. You can make a very strong argument that every move they made was defensible at the time. You really can. Ballard is not a panic GM, and for a long time they got a lot of credit around the league for not panicking, for not tanking, for not falling apart. Right? It was an unprecedented situation. You lose your 29-year-old franchise quarterback 15 days before a season. A lot of teams would have won 3 games the next year, maybe 2, maybe 5. The Colts were in the hunt the next couple of years. The one move in hindsight you wish they would have done if you're a Colts fan is not trading a first-round pick for DeForest Buckner in 2020, keeping that pick, moving into the top 6, and trying to get Justin Herbert or Tua. But at that point, the Colts felt like they had a roster that was ready to win. And they really did. I mean, I think if Luck had never retired, I think they're competing with the Chiefs for an AFC title at one point. But they just wouldn't panic, and so they signed Rivers, and that worked out. And that's the problem. That worked out really well. They went 11-5, made the playoffs, almost beat the Bills. That emboldened them to put a lot of faith in Frank Reich. And what happened next? This is the move that screwed everything up. They went and got Carson. And Carson wasn't supposed to be a 1-year, 2-year thing. It was supposed to be a 4-year thing. He was supposed to get them out of this quarterback abyss. And it went so terribly bad in the end of the season. They just stopped throwing down the field because they didn't trust him. And they fell apart against Las Vegas and really fell apart against Jacksonville. And Irsay was literally looking into how to get out of Carson Wentz's contract during the game in week 18 last year. And it was an ultimatum. It was that night he sat down with Ballard and Reich and told him, under no circumstances will this guy be back and be our quarterback next year. And so that really puts them in a bad spot this offseason. And if you remember, and this is important, they didn't move on from Carson Wentz for Matt Ryan. They moved on from Carson Wentz without a plan. There was no plan. There was just, maybe we'll look into Mariota. Maybe we'll look into Winston. Maybe we'll just see what happens. And Matt Ryan sort of fell into their laps. And honestly, that's a pretty good plan B. But they were determined to move on from Carson without a real plan. And it's really just hamstrung the rest of the roster because there's been times when free agents didn't want to come here because they didn't know who the quarterback was going to be. And you can totally understand that. So in the time, I kind of like the idea of if Frank Reich can't save Carson Wentz, who can? But I don't think Carson's ever going to get back to that level that you guys saw in 2017 when he was the front runner for the MVP through about 13 or 14 weeks.
Yeah, it seems like he's lost his job in Washington, which is sort of like the star-crossed career that he was destined to have. Sit on the sideline in the first game back in Philly and watch as his backup.
How is he going to handle that? That's what I wonder. Because
that's the thing. Like, I mean, I don't know if he's wired to be a backup.
That's a good question.
I don't know what the staying power is. If we without relitigating it too much, the Irsay wanting to get away in the middle of that Week 18 game, how much did the vaccination and his frustration with that play into that?
Yeah, publicly they said it wasn't a huge part, but okay. It was absolutely part of the decision. But it was, this was also a football decision. They just didn't think, it's hard to explain it, but they just didn't feel like he was the guy. He wasn't the right answer at that position.
Let's spin forward to this weekend a little bit and the actual matchup. There's this idea that maybe Washington showed like a blueprint of how to beat the Eagles, which I think is a little bit overstated. Everybody already knew they had a bad run defense, but the Colts running game has not been as good this season as expected, certainly as it was last year. How much of that is the offensive line and how much of that changed last week against the Raiders? I enjoyed reading your game recap. Like you threw in so many subtle jabs about how bad that Raiders team was. I thought that was funny.
I thought the Colts were a mess, man. And I talked to Tashawn, our Raiders guy, and man, they are a mess. But Raiders are terrible, man. I looked at the numbers yesterday, and in terms of pass defense, Raiders are dead last. In terms of pass defense, Eagles are right up there with the top three. And then, depending on the metric you look up, look, they played better. They deserve credit. Jeff Saturday came in and he called out the offensive line, and they played better. And JT went off, and it changes things when you can get a 66-yard rushing touchdown. But here's the interesting part about what you asked, Bo, and about how the Commanders really attacked the Eagles. And we asked Sirianni about this yesterday. There was a game a couple years ago when the Colts were limited at quarterback with Jacoby Brissett. They played in Arrowhead, and they completely dominated the ball. It was a Sunday night football game. They were depleted on defense, and they ran for 230 yards with Marlon Mack and completely kept Mahomes off the field. And Sirianni said, I thought about that exact same game. So he put together that game plan. So he's very familiar with how to attack, how teams are going to try to attack the Eagles probably moving forward. I'm a little hesitant to buy into this Colts revival, and I wrote about it this week. It's one thing to do it against the mess that is the Las Vegas Raiders. It's very different to do it against a team that's really good up front on both sides, like the Eagles. And Sirianni is going to know that. But look, I mean, JT remains one of the best players in football. If you give him a hole, he can find it. He's finally healthy. The ankle is back to normal. So if the Colts have a praying chance, I think you're going to have to hope for some home runs in the run game from Jonathan Taylor.
Is it entirely the run game, or what is Matt Ryan at this stage of his career?
He's capable. Frank Reich sold him on the play action game. So if you've got JT working, that keeps the defense thinking. And what he's going to try and do is the quick throws over the middle, the quick throws on the outside. They've got a talented young receiver in Alec Pierce, and then obviously Pittman's a stud. And Paris Campbell's really come on of late. No one had him being the leading receiver in terms of touchdowns at this point in the season, but here we are. So they can do some things in the pass game. They're not as vertical as they want to be, so they're going to have to do everything within 10 to 15 to 25 yards. But he can do it. The problem has been with him, and the reason Irsay wanted to bench him was the turnovers. He was just fumbling the ball too much, and he was throwing too many ill-advised interceptions. But he played his best game of the year on Sunday at Las Vegas, and this was always Matt Ryan's team. And when he was benched, the players inside the locker room were pissed because they didn't feel like it was on him.
Birds with Friends listeners will know that I have no choice but to bring this up. If you have a chance to talk to Matt Ryan ahead of Sunday's game, it's important to let him know that this is a bit of a revenge game. He's going up against Zach Berman, who once faced him in high school baseball.
We talked about his because that was the last time he was benched was high school, I think. So
there you go.
So Zach, you got the best of him.
My team did, not me. my team did, yes. But he was obviously an awesome football player, good basketball player, really good basketball team. Baseball was probably his third sport. So
wow, shots fired.
I think
I'll grab him in the locker room today. What position did he play?
He played. He pitched against us. He played shortstop. Yeah, he was a good player. But
of course, he was probably like the All-American kid.
Yeah, but his team never beat mine. So that is.
What about the Colts on defense, Zach? Where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses?
Good defense. That hasn't been the problem this year. In the middle, they're about as good as any team in the league, I would probably say, maybe outside of Washington. Grover Stewart, nobody knows his name outside of Indy. He's been phenomenal at nose tackle. DeForest Buckner's having another all-pro season. The edges aren't as good. They cannot get after the quarterback like they need to. This is crazy to say. They haven't missed Shaq, Darius Leonard quite as much. Now, they miss his turnovers because he was a turnover machine last year, had a hand in 12. But a couple guys, Okereke, Zaire Franklin, have stepped up. You can get at their secondary. Devontae Adams certainly got the best of their secondary last week. But I'm excited to see Kelsey and company against Buckner and Grover and see who can win that matchup, because that's really where this game's going to be won, in my opinion.
Is there any sense of optimism in Indianapolis? When the move was made to Jeff Saturday, I kept reading, this is not a tank job. This is not a tank job. And the reality is, when you look at the record, it is conceivable that's a talented team for them to go on a run. What's the temperature of the fan base right now?
Yeah, they're not tanking. Like, and you made a good point. Like, if you look at all the moves on paper, benching Matt Ryan for Sam Ehlinger, hiring a coach off an ESPN set that had only previously coached in high school, trading one of their running backs, it makes you think they're tanking.
And the way that Jim Irsay knows how to get a quarterback is number one overall.
Right.
That's been his
it's either number
right?
one overall or nothing. Right. They're not tanking. I mean, you talk to the guys in the locker room, and Jeff Saturday, man, he's not here to tank as well. The temperature is, they're starting to believe this might work. And that's a dangerous thing. Because you know how this league works, right? Like, you win a game and everything's great for the next 6 days. You lose a game, it's like, who can we fire? And the Colts, frankly, for a while there, were running out of people to fire. They fired their OC, their head coach, traded a running back. So it's, winning helps everything. And I think the fact that they played Las Vegas was probably perfect, because they have their own issues and they don't tackle in the secondary, which makes things pretty easy for your receivers. I think reality is going to hit him pretty hard this weekend. I think Sirianni wants this game. I think he's bothered by the way that Frank Reich was told to get lost.
No doubt about it.
Fired over the phone. Wasn't allowed to play the quarterback he wanted the last couple of days. Nick didn't really want to dig into Frank Reich yesterday, but at the end of his statement, he's like, look, one of the greatest football coaches I've ever been around, one of the greatest men I've ever been around. And Frank Reich was that. He absolutely was that. And didn't end well here. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles get their way, if Nick makes a comment or two about how Frank got a raw deal.
Yeah, he said, I think to you guys and to us, like, I think you guys probably can imagine how I feel about that. And so, yeah, I feel like this is a situation where if he has a chance to extend the lead late in the game, I think he may take that.
And Nick is kind of like that, right? Like, Nick is feisty. Like,
yes,
I don't think he would back down from that.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I can see Nick peering up toward Irsay's box.
I could see Nick wearing a Frank Reich shirt in the post-game press conference.
Oh,
absolutely.
I like that.
That would not surprise me.
A Bills jersey.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. Well, Zach Kiefer, thank you so much for the insight. we'll see you in the press box on Sunday, hopefully. And that'll do it for this episode of Birds with Friends. So for Zach and Marissa and Tyree, I'm Bo. We thank you for listening. We'll talk to you after the game on Sunday. And as always, we love you.